God of War might just look like another violent beat-em-up, hack-em-up action RPG, but it's also a very moving story about a father and son discovering their relationship, all set amongst the amazing world of Norse mythology and legend. And you know what? It is excellent. And I could just leave the video there and say that's my review, but I suppose I better tell you guys a little bit about the game. So don't forget, if you find this video useful, do please subscribe. You play as Kratos, who was made by mixing equal parts of Spartan warrior, Greek god, and grumpy old git. And along with his estranged son, Atreus, you'll set out on a journey across the Norse realms, trying to fulfill the final wishes of his late wife. The trouble is, the various creatures that inhabit the Norse realms, and some of the minor gods, don't really like you messing about in there, so they're going to do everything they can to try and stop you and get in your way. So then, time to pull out the big axe and apply lethal doses of brutality and violence to anyone and anything that even looks at you the wrong way as you travel across the realms, uncovering the twists and turns of this story. And by the way, folks, you don't need to have played any of the previous God of War games on PlayStation to be able to enjoy the story here. Now, when it comes to gameplay, this basically translates into a hack-em-up, slash-em-up, beat-em-up action RPG, where Kratos literally tears his way through the world, killing all manner of creatures and characters from Norse mythology, aided by his little son, Atreus, who actually gets in quite handy with the bow and arrow, and even develops some melee skills of his own later on. Although you don't directly control him, you can give him commands, and he's very useful for helping distract enemies so you can get in the big killer blows. There are no levels as such, but it is a big instant world that you can travel around and travel back to, visit parts that you maybe completed earlier, but didn't find everything that there was to find in there. And when I say everything there is to find, there's all sorts of hidden puzzles and stuff where you can get extra treasure chests, find nice upgrades and materials you can use to build better weapons and armor. The puzzle element of this is pretty good. There's also a large exploration element too, and some areas you just won't be able to access until you've developed certain skills or upgrades later on. But it's no problem, and it's quite easy to get back to anywhere that you want to go and revisit. There is a fast travel system that opens up as you progress through the game, and you'll want to use it quite a bit to get back to areas, to go and do side quests, to look for new stuff, and just to maybe feel like you've completed the world if you are one of these 100% completionists. The game also includes an awful lot of cutscenes that tie all the various events and goings on together, and they are beautifully performed and carried out, and they do make great viewing, so there is plenty of time to pause from all the action whilst you're watching the story, whilst you're looking for secret hidden little areas, trying to work out how to get round to that big glowing purple chest that you know has got something awesome in, but you can't figure out any way to get there. So there's a nice variety of game elements here. And when it comes to graphics and sound, both are absolutely amazing. As you can see from the background footage, everything is beautifully drawn, animated and detailed, and the characters in particular in the cutscenes look outstanding. And as for the sound, just get a load of this voiceover.
Battles may be won by the better soldier. Wars are won by those who are willing to sacrifice everything to ensure victory.
Catch! The pile of rocks there? With that key of Yggdrasil, you can open a magic door to the branches of the World Tree.
So what story were you going to tell?
There was one that concerned a hare and a tortoise.
Like the witch's house?
Unlikely.
So what happens?
They wager on a race between them. The hare is too confident of victory and foolish, while the tortoise is steady and disciplined. The tortoise wins.
You haven't told a lot of stories, have you?
Everything is beautifully performed, perfectly recorded and produced here. It's some of the best voiceover I've ever come across. And as for the in-game sound effects too, there's lots of big bangs and slams as things get knocked about with an axe, some beautiful guttural roars from ogres and trolls, and from Kratos when he pops his rage ability as well, and the screams of dying things. It all sounds very good. Performance-wise, I had no issues with this, which really surprised me, and it was also pretty much bug-free. Alright then, on to my likes and dislikes, and as always, starting with the good stuff. I know I've just mentioned it, but I'm just going to say it again for emphasis. I loved the graphics and sound in this game. Not only is it beautiful to look at, and every single cutscene was just a joy to watch, the voiceover was just amazing. I mean, they're all professional voice actors, but every single character in this game that is voiced sounds incredible and really well performed. I just wanted to say that again because it really needs emphasizing. And the next thing that I really liked was the combat. You really do get this sense of brutality and violence, which you need to in a game entitled God of War, as you control Kratos hacking and slashing and smashing things up. There were times when I was playing, I just wanted to shout Hulk smash at things as I just tore enemies apart with my bare hands or threw rocks across the screen. Yes, that's actually a special ability before people say you can't do that. There is an ability in the game that allows you to pick up a huge chunk of rock and hurl it at the enemies. And the combat only got better as you upgraded both your weapons and your armor, and there's some new weapons to get later on, which make things even more exciting, and put talent points or skill points into your abilities and level them up. And oh boy, does that make a big difference. And the more you do this, the more you feel like a God of War. Yeah, it's all very satisfying. Even the boss fights, the big boss fights, which are heavily staged, even they're really good. But the combat is only one of the charms of this game, of which there are many, I will add. But the story is also incredible, and I found myself getting really drawn in and liking the characters more and more as the game went through. You see, at the start of the game, Kratos comes and meets his estranged son, and they commiserate over the death of their wife and mother. And the relationship is obviously very strained. However, this relationship develops as the game goes on. But the more it goes on, the more you see a different side to Kratos. And certainly at one point you see a different side to his son as well. Not necessarily for the better, but it all makes sense by the end. Trust me, which has an ending that kind of blew me away and I just didn't see coming. But it really gives you the impression that this game is not just a story about violent conflict between the gods. It's a story about a father and a son coming to develop their relationship and find each other. And if that sounds soppy, then yes, it is a bit, but that's how the story goes. But the story isn't just about Kratos and Atreus, it's about every character they meet along the way, some of whom become part of their extended family almost, and you'll grow great affection for. I also want to add that, as much as I didn't expect this, there is actually loads of humour in God of War. There are some amazing quips between Kratos and Atreus, and some great lines, particularly from the dwarves Brok and Sindri, that just had me laughing out loud as I was playing this on stream. And it never feels corny or misplaced, it just feels like it fits right into the characters, and it really does indeed build the characters and their attitudes and personalities. For example, Kratos really is the definition of a grumpy old git, and he's clearly irritated by only two things: anything anyone says and anything anyone does. And it comes across really well in little humorous quips that are fired out. And so we've got the combat, we've got the amazing story, there's a third element to the game which really pulls it all together, but it has a puzzle element in the fact that there are lots of hidden chests and hidden upgrades and things to go and try and pick up. And the game will show you most of these as you're going through each part of the world, but you won't be able to access them all straight away. Some of them you'll have to wait till you've developed skills later on to then come back to, so you can open up a particular area, get past a certain obstacle. But other things you just have to figure out how to open them up. There'll be lots of chests with various runes on. Now some of these will have runes dotted about the nearby area that are very well hidden, especially later on. You'll have to locate and destroy, and that will unlock the chest. Other ones have like a combination lock of runes, and you're going to have to find spinny things that work a bit like a bicycle lock, where you spin them all in a certain time frame to get them in the right order, and that will open the chest. And then there are other chests that are just hidden in such a way that you can see them, but you can't necessarily figure out how to get around to them. And that's going to involve a little bit of exploring your immediate area, maybe unlocking something else or opening something else up to give you an opportunity to get to those. And I found this really engaging and a really welcome break in between the hectic fight scenes. Also, none of it feels like a distraction either. It always feels like it's quite well integrated into the path through the particular level or part of the world that you're in. The world, by the way, is also very good. There's a load of stuff that you don't need to do to finish the game. You can just play through the main story. The game tells you where to go and shows you where to go each time. That's great. But there's loads of extras which will unlock new abilities, new equipment, and just give you experience, and are just fun to do. Again, it's entirely up to you whether you are a completionist and like to go through and do these things, or whether you just want to get the main story and that's enough for you. None of it is forced upon you, but it's there if you want it. And one of the other things that really stood out and surprised me and that I really appreciated is that the fact that the game, for me, was completely bug-free, and I played it just after release. Now, I know we shouldn't be surprised that things work properly when we buy them, but in this day and age we are. We expect games and software releases to be problematic. I mean, look at Horizon Zero Dawn when that was ported over from the PlayStation to the PC like this has been. And that was pretty bad on release for optimization and issues, and there were bugs in it. And I was expecting the same here, but it didn't happen. And it worked flawlessly, and it looked great, and I didn't have one single crash or problem or notice any single glitch or bug or issue throughout my entire time playing the campaign. Although I will add that, that is the least we should expect when we're paying this sort of money for a game. Okay then, on to the bad stuff, the dislikes. And I'll be honest folks, there really isn't much I can put in here for God of War. There's a couple of minor niggling points that were maybe personal to me and they might not bother you very much, but I'm going to mention them anyway, because we need to put something in here. And one was the camera angle. And now this was only really an issue for me for about the first third of the game, by which point I got used to it. But it is very close up behind Kratos. You play this in third-person view, and there's lots of group combat where there's loads of enemies coming at you from all angles, and more enemies spawning all the time. And because the camera is so close, you can't really see what's going on to either side of you, and you don't get an indication of something coming up close behind you either. You only get to see what's in front and directly in front, and Kratos covers some of that. Now, it is a problem. You do get markers of enemies that are planning to attack, but you spend a lot of the time actually looking out for these markers turning red, which means there's an attack coming in and when to dodge, and probably more time than actually watching the thing in front of you that you're attacking. And this is a shame because the enemies are well animated and they do have good attack moves, and you need to watch the thing in front of you to know when it's about to hit you so you can interrupt it, dodge, block or counter it or whatever. But I found myself really watching out for these markers of other enemies more than I was watching the thing that I was fighting in front. And that was a bit of an issue. As I say, as the game went on, I got used to it, but I think this could have been done better. There was nothing in the settings where I could have increased the field of view, which would have given me just a camera a little bit further back and I could see more off to the side. That would have been perfect, but there's no option for that, sadly, so it is what it is. But I will say that whilst I didn't like it at the start, I got used to it and I didn't find it much of a problem further on into the game. And the second thing, this is the PC version I played, of course, but I played it with a controller because I kind of like playing my button mashing combat games like that. But you can't rebind the controller buttons at all. You can rebind mouse and keyboard. You can play with mouse and keyboard if you want, but you can't rebind the controller buttons. And I would have loved to have switched the left trigger and left button options over between aiming and blocking and a couple of other things. But there was no option to, which was a real shame and a missed trick. You kind of think that, in this day and age, that would be possible. But maybe it would have had to change all the prompts that you get on screen for everything. I don't know. I don't think it would, but it was a shame, and I would have liked that, because even towards the end of the game, I was still miss-hitting some of those buttons. So overall, I do highly recommend God of War. I had loads of fun playing this. I loved the story. I loved watching it and playing it. And there's a little tip for you guys. If you play through it, make sure after you think you've finished the game, go back to Kratos' home, the original home where you start off. You can fast travel there. There is a wonderful little extra bit that is going to set up the sequel, God of War Ragnarok, which I think is coming to PlayStation pretty soon. But it is worth going back to see. And you know what? The whole experience, yeah, I really enjoyed God of War, and I would recommend giving it a go. And speaking of giving something a go, I also highly recommend you go and give the subscribe button a go under this video if you haven't already. It helps me out a lot, and who knows, you might even enjoy it too. Okay, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.